What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. I'm here in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. I'm so glad you decided to join us today for another episode of the REIA Masterclass podcast. We're Alabama's only real estate podcast. A lot of times we like to get on some local people to the state of Alabama, but about half the time we bring on fantastic guests that are doing unbelievable things all throughout the country when it comes to real estate. And today is no different. We have got Mr. Craig Fuhr from Baltimore, Maryland with us. How's it going today, Craig?
What's up? What's up?
You doing good, man?
I am ready to do a podcast.
My fellow bald brethren, we are ready to do this, man. So
Yeah.
for if you guys are listening to this, go to the YouTube channel, search REIA in the search bar there, ALAREIA, and you can watch these on video. You can get alerts when the new ones come out. The video podcast the video version always comes out a few days before the audio version. So you definitely want to be one of our closing in on 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So definitely check that out. So Craig, tell everybody, for those that don't know who you are already, which most do because you're pretty, well known nationally. Tell everybody who you are, what you do in real estate.
Well, first, man, I want to say thank you so much, Brian, for having me on. For those of you who don't yet know Brian and the REIA, you need to know it. Congratulations on all your success, man. So,
thank you.
It's all happening so quickly, what you're growing there. And most people would look at it and go, "Oh, that guy's just lucky." Well, folks, I have to tell you, one of the hardest working people that I know, kind of puts me to shame, really. I'm old, so I don't work nearly as hard. So, but man, congratulations. It's
all right. So how much do I owe you for that? Holy cow.
Send the check to P.O. Box.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate those words.
So I've been real estate investing for about 15 years, started in 2004. So going on 15 years, and it's just been a absolute roller coaster ride the entire time. I could sit here and blow smoke up everyone's dresses and say it's all been just peaches and cream. But for those of you who are getting started in the business, just understand that it's a persistence play here. This thing is a marathon and not a sprint. And I'm really a testament to that. I was working for 3 years in the business while still working a full-time job. Got fired from I don't even know if you know this, Brian. I got fired from my full-time job in IT on the day after my 40th birthday. So I'm 51 now, so that was like 11 years ago. Day after my 40th birthday, Brian, is also my son's first birthday. His birthday is the day after mine. So here I go into my job, working for the government, making really, really good money. And I walk in and they're like, "Hey, we need to see you in the office." So that was about 9 o'clock in the morning. By 9:15, I was fired. My wife always says, "Well, weren't you laid off?" And I say, no, I was actually fired. They weren't ever going to bring me back. So this was fired, no severance, no nothing. And that's the day I became a full-time real estate investor. Never looked back.
So you were doing real estate before that day,
3
but
years.
just not full-time.
Right, exactly. And I was doing really well too. I was doing like 15 rehabs a year while still in my full-time job. So
yeah. Wow. So I definitely want to get into that. And you just really quickly, you mentioned your son's birthday is the day after your birthday.
Yeah. So my birthday's on April 3rd and his on April 4th.
That's really cool. My son was born on my birthday almost 2 years ago.
Oh, that's so cool.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, man. We missed it by about 10 hours with Jay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I woke up, real quick sidebar, not that this matters about real estate, but real quick, we woke up, my wife woke up at 4 a.m. Her water broke on my birthday. She has the baby at like 5, like an hour later.
Yeah.
And then it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was about 12 hours later where finally, like, my aunt had been there and my aunt's like congratulating everybody. And then my aunt said, "I can't believe that he was born on your birthday." And my wife was like, "Today's your birthday."
Yeah, like,
oh my gosh. I'm like, "Thanks for telling me happy birthday. I know you're a little bit busy there, but it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And you're just now telling me happy birthday, but thank you though."
Quick story, just literally 15-second story about mine. So I'm out on my birthday. It's the opening day for the Baltimore Orioles. I had tickets to the game. My father-in-law took me. I was hammered drunk before the game even started. So then we go 9 innings or 10, 7, 9 innings, whatever. And I am piss hammered drunk, sober up while having, dinner with or just after we went after the game and I had to sober up because I'm driving home. So he says on the way home, you want to go get some food for dinner. So we go out and have Korean food for dinner, get hammered again. I drop him off, pour him in the front door to my mother-in-law. And she's like, you need to get home to your wife right now. Why is that? She's having a baby. And I'm like, oh my God. So my son is being born while I have the worst throbbing hangover of my life. My wife is in like labor. And I'm just like, give her the epidural so I can get some sleep, for God's sake. Anyway,
That's great.
Back to real estate, everyone.
Back to real estate. I love how you're talking. You have to like move your head to talk into the microphone.
That's when I have to make sure everybody.
So obviously, everybody can tell by now, I've known Craig for quite some time, and Craig does a lot of great things up in Baltimore. Obviously, he's doing some rehab stuff, which I really want to talk about rehabbing, because it's weird. We talk about wholesaling a lot. We haven't talked about rehabs in a while, so I want to talk about rehabbing. Mm-hmm. But I really want to hear your story too, because you mentioned a little bit of it. You know, you got fired, and then you mentioned the words that real estate has been a roller coaster ride for you, and that it's not all peaches. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You used all these phrases, and I want you to kind of talk about that. Okay. What was it specifically? And I kind of know the story, but I want everyone to hear the story. What happened, especially during the crash, 2007, 8, 9? What happened, and how can we? The ultimate question is, what have you learned from that?
Sure. So before, when I first got started, there was no ListSource or Realty Track or any of those companies where you could go get your list from if you wanted to do direct mail marketing. So really it was, all the deals that we made were right over the kitchen table with sellers. And we went through a time after the whole meltdown where you could just go right onto the MLS, make a bunch of offers, and by the weekend you could have 2 or 3 houses. Well, now we're back. It's full circle. We're back to a time where marketing really matters. And so why do I bring that up? Well, it's part of this marathon thing. If you think you're going to get into the business, go to one of Brian's meetings, see a great presentation, and all of a sudden the deals are just going to start falling out of the trees. It just doesn't happen like that. I know everybody listening to this right now, they're going, we know, Craig. Come on, tell us something we don't know. But what I don't think people realize, Brian, is that this business is such a persistence play. It's such a, if you're not consistent and persistent with it, it will never reward you. And I think a lot of times people get really discouraged when they don't see this microwave success that we've all become so accustomed to in our world. And I have many students where, they come in all full of piss and vinegar and they're ready to hit the ground running, and they send out their first mailer and they don't get any calls. And I've warned them that was going to happen. And they're still like, this stuff doesn't work for me, Craig, you lied. It only works for you. And so that's really, Brian and I were talking, I'll be perfectly honest, before we started the recording here, and I'm kind of in a funk right now. And it's not because, I'm not doing all the things that I know I need to be doing. It's because I've had some stumbles over the past few months, right? I've put all the work in, stumbled and fall, didn't get the results I was looking for. And so I'm sort of like in this licking my wounds mode. And I'm not taking my own advice here in that, like, you just got to keep your head down. You must keep working in this business, because those who do are ultimately rewarded, and they're rewarded the most. Wouldn't you agree?
There's no doubt.
I mean, it's one of the only businesses I know where if you just do the right things, if you just do the right things in terms of your marketing, staying consistent, you are going to be rewarded, period, full stop. The phone's going to ring, you're going to make offers, and you will do deals. And so it's a great business in that sense, that there's a very low barrier to entry. The barrier to entry is your desire to win, right?
Craig, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to get into what happened during the crash for you, because you said it was a roller coaster ride.
Yeah. So, starting off in the business, first few years, I did a few deals. My father-in-law was my partner. And my very first deal ever, I made $98,000 net cash in 90 days. We flipped a house and made $98,000 net profit. And so I'm looking at deals. And back then, I mean, you could ride down the streets of Baltimore and find deals all day long. And I would take them to my father-in-law, and he would say, no, not for us. Don't like that when our contractors won't go there. It won't be like the first deal, So I found a new partner. And this partner that I found was a guy who had some capital, And I had come into some capital at the time. So we put our capital together. We start buying houses like they lost the recipe. And we sort of became house collectors. And when you become a house collector, that means houses are just sort of sitting, waiting for your contractors to get to them. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking on the interest.
Right.
And what happened was we became really landlords sort of by accident. And so it was actually going really well. We were collecting rents. Things were going great. And then 2007 comes along and everything melts down. People stop buying houses. And now think of it, folks. You've got houses all over Baltimore City in great neighborhoods with granite countertops and recessed lighting and beautiful bathrooms. And now, rather than going to my transitional neighborhood where people are getting shot, where I've got beautiful apartments waiting, now people can take their Section 8 voucher and go to the nice neighborhood for the guy who was going to sell that house, but now he can't because the market sucks. So hell with it, I'll just rent it out. So those people with the Section 8 ticket, the golden ticket, go to those houses instead of my war zone place. Yeah. So we had 28 units altogether. I had 3 apartment buildings that had 4 units each, so that was 12, and then I had additional single-family houses. And the meltdown happens. We couldn't rent these places, Brian, to save our lives. I mean, we could not give these units away. 6 months free rent? Sure, no problem. You want a 42-inch flat-screen television? No problem. You want a year's worth of groceries to the nearest grocery store? No problem. What do you want? Tell us. We'll give it to you. We could not get them rented. Didn't matter. So on an almost semi-monthly basis, I was going into this little bank, this little local bank that you should be dealing with if you're just getting started in the business. You want to find that small local bank that'll help you out. And they would pat us on the back and say, man, we love you guys. Don't change. Just keep on making the payments. We promise you we'll get through this little period right here with the regulators, and we're going to help you guys out. So we love you. Don't. And so now here's the crazy part. I'm doing rehabs during this time, and they're going great. I'm making 40, 50 grand a rehab. Houses are on the market. Everybody thought no one was buying houses after the whole mortgage meltdown. Houses were selling very quickly in nice neighborhoods when they were done properly. I mean, the average time on market during that time, that 2009, 10, 11, 12, Brian, for me, was like 14 days. Less than 30 days, always on the market. So I get these great rehabs. I put them on the market. Beautiful. They'd sell quickly. I'd make 40, 50 grand net profit. And then that money would come in this hand and go right out this hand for my rentals. So it's like I make this big, huge payday. I'll never forget, in August of 2012, I made $225,000 net profit. And it was like in and then out. Because when you have 28 rentals and half of them are vacant, the bank still wants their money. So here's what happened. We had the bank do an independent appraisal of all the assets. This was an independent appraiser. And he came in, and get this, folks. The bank appraised the assets. We had $1.2 million in mortgages, okay? And the assets were valued at $600,000. I'm sorry, $400,000. So we were 66% underwater. $1.2 million in mortgages, $400,000 of valued assets. My partner calls me up about 3 weeks later, and he was like, I can't do it anymore. And he declared bankruptcy without even telling me he was going to do it first, right? So he goes and sees a lawyer. He declares bankruptcy. I figured, like, what am I waiting for? I did the same. And I'm not proud to say it, but I literally got out of $1.2 million in debt for $5,000 that it cost for my attorney. And that's the story. We can talk lessons. I mean, obviously there was a big lesson.
So for those that just don't, and me included, that don't really know how that works, and this is what year, by the way?
This was 2012.
2012. Declared bankruptcy. What happens next? Like, what did you do next?
So you go see a lawyer. You got to put together all your paper. Oh, I'm sorry.
After it's finalized. Yeah.
You didn't mean like what happens.
No, not tell us how to file bankruptcy.
Step one.
What'd you do next? Yeah, I mean, you got to be kind of down in the dumps.
I get it. So I had all these, I was in a mastermind at the time with like 12 of the top investors around the country, people still who I still know to this day, many of whom you know. And a lot of us were in the same boat. You know, we were high flyers. We had a lot of assets, and we were killing it right until, you know, the biggest meltdown in the history of the world happened. And everyone said to me, Craig, this is freedom. You're going to wake up the day after your discharge, have no debt, but you'll have all the knowledge. You'll have all the experience and the knowledge, but you won't have any debt. You'll feel it's the most freeing thing, they said. And dude, I felt like the biggest loser, the biggest irresponsible loser ever. Because like I wasn't raised to like walk away from your responsibilities, you know? And yeah, man, I mean, it still hurts just to talk about it. Like it was a really dark time, thinking like, what am I going to do? Go get a job? Go back to work? Like I'm unemployable at this point, right? So I had to lick my wounds. You know what I did? I started making offers. And within a month and a half, I had 2 houses under contract. And each one of those, I you know, if I'm being honest, I should have made about 30 grand on each one of those. Again, still sort of like not in the game. I'd lost some of my best contractors. So I slowly had to start putting all the pieces back together. And thankfully, and this is probably the biggest tip of the call so far, if you don't have a support system in this business, you may as well not be in the business. Because it gets back to this roller coaster thing, right, Brian? Where, you know, if you can't always be your biggest cheerleader. Like I'm a big fan of being my own biggest cheerleader, but certain days I just don't feel like getting out the pom-poms, right? I don't feel like cheering for myself. I need somebody else to cheer for me.
Yeah, I was cheering for you earlier.
You were, thank you. And that happens to be my wife. My wife has never once said to me, hey, maybe this real estate thing isn't for you. You know, she's never said that. She's like, look, you've won at the game before. You've, you know, been at the top of the top. And so you can always get back there. And that's exactly what I've done, you know?
Yeah. And I just think that's personally, I think that's just kind of entrepreneurship 101 is it's not if, it's when you're going to get knocked down. Something's going to happen to you at some point or another. And are you going to get back up? Mm-hmm. The person who loses is the person who quits.
Yeah.
You said it earlier. Real estate is a persistent play. You've got to be persistent. You have to keep at it. It's not any kind of, you know, if you're getting rich quick, then you're probably not doing it right. And you're probably going to have, you know, some catastrophic things happen to you. It's not a get rich quick play. It is you be persistent and you just little by little by little by little and just keep it going. Don't get over leveraged. Just do a little at a time. And I couldn't agree with you more. Talk about, you mentioned support system. Mm-hmm. And you kind of gave credit to your wife. What, just for the people that are listening, what are some other things, and you mentioned a mastermind as well. What are some things that people can do, maybe that are getting started, maybe done a few deals, who can get around the right people and build that support system?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a product of some really bad coaching and some really, really good coaching. Like
me too.
My mentor is really like a father to me. I mean, and the crazy thing is he's actually younger than me.
I was about to say, is this someone I know who it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should I say?
I don't care.
Oh, it's Steve Cook. I mean,
okay. Yeah. Steve Cook has the endorsement on the front of my book.
Oh, that's right.
You got the first edition. You didn't get that, but the second edition, his endorsement is on the front cover of my book.
I thought you mentioned him somewhere. Did you mention him at all anywhere in there?
Not in the book.
All right, I apologize. Anyway, so Steve was.
I've never met Steve ever.
Really? So
ever.
The endorsement was completely hollow. Like he.
I sent. So this is just real quick. I want you to talk about Steve in a second. I'm a big believer in networking. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer, and when I say networking, it's not what you may think, or it's not what most people think. I really and truly take it to the next level. Like I didn't know who Steve. I knew who Steve was. I knew what he did, and my relationship obviously was with Sean through Life and Air, McCloskey. But I sent my book when I printed that first edition. I sent it to over 100 different real estate investors all throughout the country. You were one of them that got the first edition. And when Steve got it, he read it, which blew me away. He read it. He posted on Facebook that this was just an incredible book. And he wrote all these glorious things about this thing. And I was just like, wow, awesome, cool. And so I sent him a message on Facebook and I said, do you mind if I use the quote that you put? Do you mind if I use that as an endorsement in my book? And he said, of course, use it. That's
awesome.
Yeah. But that's the power of networking. That's the power of giving without the expectation of something back in return.
And well, so you mentioned, we were talking about coaching and support, like support systems. I believe in this business that, it can make you an island very, very quickly. This business can be so isolating at times when it's just like you against the entire world getting this deal to the finish line, right? And so imagine that now if you're, you've got a wife and a family and you're trying to like make ends meet and you only get a payday when you sell a house. And so when the time you start a house to the time you finish a house in this business, the average time is about 6 months. So if I pick up a house on January the 1st, my payday on that house is not until June, if everything goes just right. So you better have somebody to kind of prop you up along the way to go, hey man, are you doing all the right things? You're not talking about it. You're not over there enough. Like to keep you motivated, to keep your mind in the game. Now multiply that times several houses that you might have going on at one time.
Right.
So coaching is imperative in this business, especially now because a lot of people are buying deals that are just way too marginal right now. And I think a good coach would be like, hey, that deal really doesn't work. You should probably stay away from that. There's a lot of one-time investors in the market right now, Brian. I think we're going to see a big fallout over the next couple years of people that tried the business, failed dismally because they thought they knew what they were doing. They were watching television shows, but they had no idea that they were getting into really marginal deals. I see it every single day.
Yeah.
That's what a support system, that's what a network, that's what an REIA does for you, right? You go there to get with other like-minded people. And don't get with the people who have no clue of what they're doing.
Totally. You
get with the people who are clearly in the room and know what they're doing. Like when I walked in and Steve Cook would be at a Maryland, where I live in Maryland, he would be in a REIA meeting, Brian, and there would be 50 people around the guy. And I instantly know, I'm like, whoever that guy is, I need to be around him, right? And so seek those people out as your support system.
Couldn't agree more. It's an awesome point. Mentioned coaching. You mentioned, support systems. I think all that is obviously important. There's a lot, like you said, the market is just being flooded with brand new real estate investors. Everybody wants to do it, but not everyone knows how to do it properly. Coming to a REIA meeting, obviously good things. And guys, I mentioned the book. You can get that on Amazon. Just search my name, search Brian Trippe, it'll come right up. You can go and order that. Moving on to the next shameless plug. So I want to talk about fix and flips because is this, Craig, just because you never really answered the question, the very first question I asked you, you never really answered it because you were talking so gloriously about me, which I thank you for. But tell everybody what does your day-to-day look like today? You're actually doing mostly fix and flips is what you do?
Yeah. So my whole philosophy is a timeless one, I believe, in the business. I wholesale deals and I cherry pick the really good ones to hang on to and flip. So if I'm doing marketing and I come across a deal where it's going to be a massive pain in the ass, or it's in a neighborhood that I don't care for, or it looks sort of marginal for me for the time and the money that I'm going to have to put into it, I wholesale it. I get rid of it as quickly as I can. If I think I can just put that anywhere. If I think I'm trying to have a podcast here, and
I dropped my pen on the mic.
So. But the other thing,
I'm taking notes, man. You're talking. I'm taking notes.
All pearls of wisdom. The other thing I do is I wait for those really, really cherry deals to come along in the neighborhoods that I love, in places where I know that there's velocity, and houses that I know I can make at least a net profit, net in my pocket of $35,000 plus. If I can't do that, deal's not for me.
Gotcha. So just give me an idea of some numbers, if you don't mind. Share some numbers with us. Roughly how many wholesale deals are you doing a year? Roughly how many flips? How many you got going on right now?
Yeah,
Stuff like that.
I'm a quality guy, and it's another big sort of thing in this business where everybody wants to get huge, everybody wants to scale, everybody always wants to double their business. I'm a guy who, I'll do 6 rehabs a year at my usual net profit of at least somewhere around $40,000 plus. And I have students. I have about 16 students who are all doing deals, so I get to leverage myself through them as well. And run a little thing called Flip Club here in Maryland. You can look it up.
Definitely go check it out. If you're anywhere in the Baltimore area, it's a no-brainer. Definitely look that up.
Yeah, it's the Baltimore metro area. I live like halfway in between DC and Baltimore, so in Howard County. So when you ask me how much, it's not really about the quantity of deals for me. I really don't shoot for, hey, I got to do this many deals this year. I just consistently do my marketing. It produces, 5 to 10 wholesales a year and another 6 or so deals a year. So not a big volume guy. Never been that guy. My coaching, my mentoring was always completely antithetical to quantity. Steve Cook he started out a quantity guy, noticed that his quality of life was going down rapidly when he became a quantity guy. He built this big, huge machine that had to be fed every month. It's a bad thing when you got to wake up and do 2 deals, just 2 or 3 deals a month just to pay your nut to keep the lights on and everything going. That's not fun. And we all get into this business for what, Brian? More what? Freedom.
Time, freedom. Yep.
Right. And so one of the things that this business can do is can take over your life very quickly. Yep. If you have a perfected vision for what you want your personal life to look like. And so I'm sitting in my house right now. My children are upstairs. They were just at the pool. I could be in an office right now, but I'm getting just as much done in my house. So it's all about quality, folks. Don't ever play the quantity game in this business because it never, ever works.
You sound like a Life and Air commercial.
I am. Well, I was there when Steve kind of birthed the term. I was with him at lunch when he kind of came up with this Life and Air idea. So pretty cool.
So real quick, just as a sidebar, if you don't know what Life and Air is, you need to check it out. Just lifeandair.com. We'll link that up in the show notes. It's life. It's millionaire, except you have a life in the front of it.
That's right.
It's like being a millionaire, except you have a life, is what I heard. So you mentioned this offline, and I want to talk about this because we're talking about fix and flipping. Before we go, this is kind of like the main part of the show that I really want people to get the most out of. You've mentioned this, I think a couple of times to me in the past, not on the show so far, but you talk about how flipping houses is, and this is pretty obvious, it's not a scalable business. Yeah. Because, if it was, you'd see publicly traded companies that are flipping houses, and you don't really, even though Zillow and some of these other places are trying to get into stuff like that, it's very difficult. And I think it's a great segue because you just got done saying that, I would rather do quality over quantity. I'm only doing 5, 6, 7 flips a year, but they're quality. I'm going to make a really good profit on these deals, and I've got my time and my freedom, which is why we all get into this business, right? Mm-hmm. For the person out there who's really thinking to themselves, I want to do 20, 30, 50, 50 of these flips. You've mentioned this to me in the past that it's not really, when you start adding up your hours that you're working and you start adding up, how much it costs to actually make these things run, is it really worth it?
I guess it all depends on what it is that you value, but I've had the luxury and the real privilege, honestly, of speaking to investors all over the country. I've spoken at a lot of the larger, real estate investment clubs and masterminds. And I've I always poll the audience. I say, look, let me ask you guys something. Why is it that you got into this business? What are you looking for? And 9 out of 10 people, they all say freedom. They all say they want more freedom in their lives. Now, I can only go on that. And so if you want to live a life where you can't go away for 2 weeks because your business says you can't, if you want to live a life and you buy the big McMansion and you've got this massive payment that you have to make every month and you've got the yoke around your neck that is the bank, if you want to live that life, more power to you. But I will tell you that I know guys in this country who do 10, 12, 15 deals a month. And it's usually the guy, and I'm not talking about wholesale deals, Brian. I'm talking about rehab deals. And these guys have no life, period. Two of the biggest guys I know in Baltimore, I won't mention them, but by name. But I mean, the big joke is one of the guys doesn't know the names of his own kids because he was never there to watch them grow up. He was always at work. It's not unlike to see these guys out at night looking at houses at 11 o'clock on the streets of Baltimore. And so, look, but many of you are listening right now. Maybe you've never done a deal before. Maybe you want to do a deal. One of the first things I would say to you before you even start your marketing is sit down and truly write out, what do I want my personal life to look like? What do I want it to look like? Do I want to be able to take 2-week vacation? Do I want to be able to spend time at my church? Do I want to be able to spend time with my kids anytime I want? What do I look like as a spouse? Am I going to be there on my phone all the time at night while my wife is trying to talk to me or my husband? Or am I going to be sitting there really engaging with them and being present in the moment? And I will tell you, if you want to try to do 50 rehab deals a year, that ain't going to happen, period. Because you're either going to be paying a bunch of people to do it for you, right? You're going to have a staff, a massive staff, or you're going to be, not making a whole lot of money per deal. You're going to be spending a lot of time yourself, and your margins shrink significantly. And I know you and I talked about a guy who in your town who has a very small. You said he's kind of a one-man show, but he does a lot of deals a year, and you would admit right now that is an anomaly, not the norm in this business.
You're way more qualified to answer that question than I am. Okay. I don't talk to a lot of house flippers. It's kind of weird. I know tons and tons of wholesalers all throughout the country. I just never got into the fix and flip game. I'm going to do like 4 this year. Yeah. And they're not going to be as profitable as yours. It's going to be like 15, 20K.
Yeah, I wouldn't even touch it. So, I mean...
Well, I don't have to do anything, though. So
No, I get it. I mean, it's just one of those things where I know in my... when you come from Maryland and the average house is, 50, 60 years old, you're not going to walk into that house and paint and patch. You have to do an $80,000 to $90,000 rehab in there, and you can't do those overnight. So there are... Look, Brian hates big painting with big brush. You hate the big... What's the word you said? You don't like when you kind of paint...
right.
Paint the broad brush, right? So he doesn't like when I say you can't have a business and be happy if you're doing 50 rehabs a year. You can't have a very profitable...
Yeah, you can't say that.
He hates that.
You can't say that because it's not true.
I'm here to tell you all right now, it is extremely rare. And there are guys that you probably know their faces, and you see them on the internet or you see them on Facebook, and you see them maybe driving a Lamborghini or driving their whatever, or vacationing or stepping off of some rented private jet. And you say to yourself, I want to be that guy. Well, you better check it. You better really understand what that guy is going through before you wish that upon yourself, because most of those guys, truth be told, are the most miserable people you'll ever want to meet. And that's the truth. Period.
Preach it.
They are, because I know them. I'm not talking about because I think this way. It's because I know these people. They're miserable. A lot of them are crying the blues because they used to make $40,000 on a deal, but now they've got a $2 million payroll, and they've got lights to keep on. They've got office space. They've got their $100,000 a month in advertising that they're doing, and their $40,000 paydays have now shrunk into like $5,000 paydays. And so the question is, what would you rather have? Quantity and no life, or quality and a life? I'm off my soapbox now.
So I don't know how rare it is. And I'm glad you're shedding light on this, because all I see I see a few people in our market area that are doing some pretty big things. And I do not talk to fix and flippers for the most part nationwide. I talk to lots of wholesalers nationwide, not a whole lot of fix and flippers. And there are lots of very successful wholesaling businesses out there that are doing very, very well.
Yes, there are. And you know, it's funny. A lot of the guys who are doing quantity rehabbing have now switched over to doing more wholesaling because it's a quicker payday. There are far less moving parts. There's no contractors to worry about. There's no water bill. There's no property taxes. There's no 6 months, right? You get into a wholesale deal, you get a contract, and hopefully within a few days, you've assigned that contract to somebody and you're on your way to at least a $10,000 payday. So with that said, you can see where something like that would be more easily scalable, but still, I still maintain that there are a lot of guys who are doing quantity in wholesaling. And I've talked to several, not as many as rehabbers, but a lot of them cry the blues about how much they're spending in marketing.
Yep.
Get the phone ringing.
Yep.
Then they get like an acquisition manager who goes out and kind of qualifies the deal and stuff like that. You got to pay that person 10 to 15% of the deal.
Or 33.
Or 33, whatever is fair. And so as you scale, you start to say to yourself, well, I can't do all this, nor do I like to do everything. So I'm going to go find somebody to do that part that I don't like or that I don't have the time for. That person has to be paid. And so that's obviously coming off of the end profit, right? And so again, I mean, I think this business is one where if you try to grow a large organization, it's one of those things where your net profits are going to shrink tremendously. And it just becomes a thing at that point where it's like, do I really have the freedom that I wanted to have? Am I, you know what I mean? Like I have to work this much more to make sort of the same amount of money. I don't know. I mean, I've never been a quantity guy. So it's really, you know, I come with sort of a jaded view of it, I guess. But for those of you who are listening, most of you are not yet in a position yet where you're doing any sort of quality, right? Wouldn't you agree, Brian? That most people listening. So, you know, just you know, we're probably putting the cart before the horse here a little bit. I think really the things that as someone just starting out, if you could just focus on getting the phone to ring, making offers, good things will happen after that. And you can worry about these bigger issues as they come. However, don't ever lose sight of the fact of why it is that you got into the business. That should be on your computer screen, on the refrigerator, whatever. That vision of why it is that you got into this business. What is it that you were trying to escape? What is it that you're trying to get more of? Whatever. That should always be front and center, and you'll never get off track.
Craig Fuhr, ladies and gentlemen, if you are in the Baltimore or DC area and you're listening to this right now, definitely get in touch with him. Craig, how can people find you and find out about the Flip Club?
Yeah, so they can go to theflipclub.com, or you can look for me on Facebook at Craig Fuhr, Fuhr. You know, I'm on Facebook a lot. YouTube. I have some videos of students that are doing deals. I like to do videos of my deals, so you can check me out on YouTube as well.
And if someone wants to listen to your incredibly amazing opera singing skills, they can search your name into YouTube as well?
I don't think so.
No?
There is one video of me. I sing, folks. I sing. And so there is a video of me singing at an Easter service at my church where there was probably about 1,500 people in the congregation. And so, you know, it's out there. I'm not going to tell you how to get it because it's embarrassing. So
maybe search Craig Fuhr opera.
Are we done?
See what comes up.
Are we finishing up? I'm just getting rolling here. I mean,
I don't know what else to ask you. Give me a great question to end on. What should I ask you?
Oh man,
I feel like you gave some great quality answer. You know, quality over quantity, right?
Hey, let me ask you and then you can ask me. What do you think of the market right now? What do you think of the market what do you think of it right now, and where do you think it's heading over the next year and a half?
So I love what you said earlier when you said that people think, and I've heard this from a lot of people who are in it and survive the crash. I wasn't in it. I didn't get in until 2012.
I thrived in the crash. I didn't.
So I've heard that, a lot of people got destroyed, right? But I've heard that, you said the exact same thing. People are still buying houses.
Yep.
It's not like people just stopped buying houses.
Nope.
So we experienced the worst thing in history. The chances of something like that ever happening again, like that, is like almost zero, or at least in our lifetime, or at least in the next 40, 50 years. But we'll have another correction. There's no question about that. Real estate cyclical. I think first of all, let me say this. This is not a political show. We are not talking politics, period. Okay, making that perfectly clear.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
I know you would. That's why I had to make it perfectly clear. But I will say that there are certain administrations, whether you agree with it or not, there are certain administrations that like to put, restraints on business owners, for whether it's good or bad. We're not talking about that.
That's right.
But right now we're in a current administration that does not want a lot of constraints on business owners, and they've made it very clear, and they've passed policy. And we are in an economic time right now, at least for the next 2 years, at least, that I think things are going to be incredibly well, just because of the administration that we're in, and has just kind of rolled back a lot of regulations, and will continue to do so for the next 2 years.
Yes.
That's why I don't think we're as close as some people think we are.
Exactly.
But if there's an administration change in 2 years, then we can start to see something like that. And now, again, I'm not getting into, whether that's a good thing or that's a bad thing. And just because I'm not saying that an economy can't boom just because a Democrat takes office. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying specifically when it comes to real estate and the market that we're in, that's just my opinion.
I did a presentation about a year ago, Brian, where we talked about I did some fairly deep research on the real estate cycle. And for the past 100 years, there was a guy, I forget the guy's name, but he basically came up with it's about a 32-year cycle, believe it or not. And it goes from like recession to like a crazy building phase to like oversaturation back to recession, right? And so right now we're in the building phase. We're long out of the recession, obviously. And so barring, and I agree with you completely about everything you just said over the past minute and a half. There is a lot less regulation right now. There's been tax law that's passed that's been very freeing for businesses. And so the economy is doing incredibly well right now. It's really humming more than it has in the past 8 to 10 years. So that said, I think there are geopolitical things that could happen. Putin could fart the wrong way and start a war. You never know. So those types of things could happen. Energy prices could go up. We are seeing right now material prices on the rise. And so for those of you who are starting off in the business, for anybody listening to the podcast, I do believe, Ryan, it's not a time right now to be sort of like just hanging on to deals. There's a lot of guys I know that'll have a house sitting here and a house sitting there. You might have wholesalers that are kind of getting marginal deals under contract. I came from a place, Brian, where if I signed a contract for a wholesale deal, if I can't find an end buyer, I got to be the buyer. I don't just rip up the contract and say to the seller, hey, I'm sorry, I couldn't sell your contract, right? And so if you're an honorable wholesaler and you do sign your name on the bottom line, if you can't find an end buyer for your deal because the market's gotten tight, or maybe you're getting tight deals, you might want to start thinking about getting far better deals. All right. So if you're putting marginal deals under contract, I think we're in a time right now where that's not being rewarded, right? Like in my market right now, things are actually slowing down. In California, things are slowing down a bit. I've had a house on the market right now that's getting no showings whatsoever. It should have been sold on the first day if it was 6 months ago. So I just think it's an odd time. It was extremely hot over the past year and a half. I mean, hot like 2004. So if you're listening to this right now, I will tell you that you should be getting good, solid deals under contract. If your gut is telling you, hey, this is wrong, then it probably is. But if you're not listening to guys like Brian, if you're not going to your local REIA, if you're not talking to seasoned professionals who can help you out with a deal, you should be. Because this is a time that is not going to reward marginal deals.
Good stuff. Yeah. I do think that I'm not disagreeing with anything you said, but I also think that context is important, that Baltimore is going to be a completely different market than a Birmingham, Alabama.
I agree.
And, so keep that into consideration as well. I think if you look at, this is Birmingham now, if you look at Birmingham's chart, when it comes to average sales price, average days on market, stuff like that, for us, August and September, things tend to dip. And then they get back hot October, November, and then they dip again December, January, and then February they start to crank up. And that always happens.
Sure.
That is not for us. The last month is not really a tell. For us, we have the highest average sales price last month. We do a market analysis every single month. Last month these are the numbers for the month of July. Highest average sales price in history in Birmingham, Greater Birmingham. So lowest days on market that we've ever. I think it's at 44 or something like that. It's average days on market 48. I can't remember what it was exactly. Go back and watch or listen to the market analysis. But this is where I like I said, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I do think that first of all, real estate's local. Yep. Real estate is very, very local, and what's happening in Baltimore or in the DC area, which are very, very crazy, volatile, hot markets, right? Volatile markets. We're not a volatile market, period.
Yeah. I mean, I do talk to guys all over the country, guys that are in different parts of the country. And, I'm hearing, most of the guys I'm talking to are kind of crying the blues right now that things have definitely slowed down. And again, that could totally be summer months, sort of like, and I want to believe that it's actually more people, because the economy is so hot right now, so many people are working. I want to believe that more people are vacationing right now. I don't know. More people are taking vacations, so they're not looking for houses. I don't know.
So you really have to, this is why we haven't talked a whole lot about, I said in the beginning, we don't talk a whole lot about fixing and flipping houses, because Birmingham's not really a fix and flip town. And that doesn't mean that you can't fix and flip here and make money. It doesn't mean, that's not what I'm saying. Birmingham's a cash flowing market. People come and buy houses in Birmingham for cash flow. They're buying them for a buy and hold play. And we don't have a lot of that going on here. So when you say the market's slowing down, we're in all these big markets, we're more similar to Memphis.
Memphis, right.
Yeah, if you had to compare us to any city, we're the closest comparison is Memphis.
So are you wholesaling mostly to landlords?
Almost exclusively.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Or turnkey companies. We have a lot of turnkey rental companies here, or we're doing it our own. We're selling them. We do turnkey flips.
Sure.
They're called turnkey flips instead of retail flips.
Yep.
So anyway, real estate's very local. I would encourage anyone. There's statistics and there's data everywhere. I mean, you can just search your city and type in, average days on market, LA, wherever you are. And I would encourage you to do stuff like that to learn more about your local market. And if you're in the Baltimore or DC area, you need to go to theflipclub.com and get in touch with this guy right here. Been in the business for 15 plus years, and he's just an honest guy. He's an honest guy like me. Just going to absolutely tell you exactly like it is, and is not going to sugarcoat anything, just like I do. And I think that's the kick in the pants that most people need. So Craig, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and giving just such great value to our audience. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. I'd love to do it again anytime.
Awesome, man. Guys, hit that subscribe button. We love you so much, and we'll see you next time.